All right, in this video, we're going to look at how we pass data back after we've navigated into a view. We want to go back and send data back when we do that. And that's even a little tricky in UIKit, as well as a few new things that we're going to learn in SwiftUI. So let's start with UIKit, and I'll show you how we do it. Now, what I've done here is I've made a few changes. First of all, up here in the cell itself for this table, I'm actually have the text label and then the detailed text label showing. And the reason I'm doing that is because when we run this, we want to be able to see the name and the actual population on the table. When we dive into the detailed view, we'll continue to see those, but now we have a new text field here where we can enter a new population. So we put that new population in, and then we have a button here that's going to be dismissing us back to the parent controller, and that then should cause the table view to show the new value, and that will demonstrate us sending the data back. So here's how we do this. First of all, in this view controller needs to declare a Unwind Segue that will run as the dismiss happens. So when this detailed view controller is dismissing, then the segue that's here that we've set up will run, and that's where we can grab that data from this view controller and do with it what we want. So to do that, we can first declare a Unwind Segue, and we do this by saying IB action, and then we will say Unwind Segue, and this just has to take in an argument of UI storyboard segue. And that creates a signature that is needed and looked at when we go use this in storyboard over here. So once we've created that, then we need to write the logic for what we would do here. So essentially, the first thing we're going to do is want to grab the view controller for the segue that this is pointing to. And it's a little bit reversed over what we've done before. So we're going to say let the view controller equal segue dot, and instead of destination, because it's not where we're headed, because this is the destination view controller on when we're dismissing, it's source. So we want to see what view controller are we coming from, and that is what we're going to use. And then we're going to say city detail view controller, and that will actually give us access to that detailed view controller as an object that then we can work with. So let's look at the detail view controller for just a second. So we've added this text field here, but we haven't added any outlets or any way to respond to changes in the text field. And we have added a button, but we haven't done anything with that button as far as dismissing. So let's go ahead and do that. So first off, we're going to respond to any changes that the text field receives as part of an IB action. So I am going to drag this over here, and it is an action, and we're going to pick editing changed, which basically says anytime anything's typed, we're going to get an update. And so we can just say did change as the name and hit connect. And now we have something that will be called every time we type something new in here. Now we're going to assume that I'm not going to handle the case where you've typed in letters when we're really expecting numbers. So what we're going to do at this point is just receive this data here, read it, and put it into our city value that we were passed down. So I could say city.population equals, and then we could say, now at this point we would want to reference the sender. And we can do that one of two ways. I can create an outlet for it, which is probably the easiest, or I can cast the sender to a text field. I'm going to just do this. So I'm going to grab this, pop it up here, and say text field. And now I can, right here, I can say text field dot text, and then we're going to convert this to an integer, right? Because that's what population stores. And then we're going to do an exclamation point to say that we are always going to succeed when we do that. And by the way, textfield.text, text is also optional. So it's saying here, hey, I don't understand how we can do an int on an optional. So we'll do a bang there as well. And now we are getting what we want. So this is going to run every time we type a number in here. And that full number is going to be read and converted and set on our local property here. So now let's look at how do we get that data back to the parent view controller. So we're going the other way. So we, over here, as a reminder, we created this Unwind Segue. So here is where we can attach this button to it. And I can just say, let's just drag from here to here. And you'll notice it actually reads the Unwind Segue availability from the other view controllers in our project. So I'm going to pick that. And now I've actually tied the button action to that Unwind Segue. By doing that, when this button is tapped, this function right here will run. So now we have this VC, right? The VC is this detailed view controller. And what we want to do is we want to update the proper city data based on what we selected originally. So right now, we don't know, we don't remember what we actually picked in this list, and we need to do that. So I'm gonna create another var here that says index path is going to be index path, and we'll make it optional because it hasn't been assigned yet. And then down here in did select row at index path, we want to remember it. So here we would say self.indexPath equals index path. So when this is tapped and the segue is going to happen, we're also going to remember it. Now, I'm going to just actually put this. We want to do this first before we perform the segue. Probably doesn't matter, but I think that's safer. So because we've stored this here, it's not really that important to send it anymore. Although we can. So we can just let this happen. So we can say let the index path be this. We don't have to make any changes here, but at least we've stored the index path for here. So now what we can do is we can say favorite cities, and then we do the self.indexPath.row equals, and we can then say vc.city. Right? We can reference that city struct that we have in the detail because we got it here, and now we can put it here. And this we can say we're going to be sure when this happens that this is already available. So if I command B here, I should get a valid compile, which we do. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. So here we are. I'm going to pick Boston. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to type in an 8 to start with. So that would just change it to population 8. Now, I've gotten this crash, and if we look down here, it says unrecognized selector sent to instance. Now, this is one of those things that is very specific to UIKit and can really bite students and even professionals like me because you're like, what the heck is going on? And it turns out that this text field has been assigned to multiple actions, and we didn't realize it. So if I look at this, we can see that it's been assigned 2 different times. So I'm going to delete these because there was only one here, and I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to go back to here and grab this to here. And now I've got that set, and let's see if it did the correct one. So it did end editing, so we don't want that. So let's go back to here, close this, and we are deleted, so we can do a new one, and I am going to pick editing changed, and we'll call it did change for just a second, and then we're literally going to take this and put it here and go ahead and delete this. So we have now did change. I think this will work this time. So again, this is something that's just UIKit specific. if you delete something over here, sometimes it doesn't delete that connection. And because it keeps the connection around, when it goes to trigger something and it's not there, you'll get that exception. So now let's see if I hit an 8 here, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. So that's good. Now we're going to click our button, which should dismiss us. And when we come back here, we should see 888-888, but we don't. Now, the reason for that is that although that data changed here, this did not get re-rendered because we didn't say that the table view should reload. So these sort of refreshing things are all things in UIKit that you kind of have to do manually at times. And Swift UI, you won't need to do that. So if we come down here in our Unwind Segue, after we've updated this array, we want to reload the table view. So first off, we need to get access to the table view. So we can come over here, and I'll grab this, and we'll create a IB outlet for this. And there's table view. And now I can say table view.reload data. And now let's run this again and see what happens. Nope, we got a build failure. So what's wrong here? So it's saying we have redeclared this. That's because I had this originally. So we're going to take this out. We already have it here, but I want to make sure that I haven't created two of these again. So I'm going to come up here to here, and we only have the one table view. So I think we're good. So let's go ahead and run again. And this time it compiles. And we're going to go into Boston, and I'm going to say 888-888, and click the button, come back, and sure enough, now it has changed because we've reloaded the table view. So essentially what we've had to do is go in and add code here for an Unwind Segue, go over here, map the dismiss to that, then get access to the other controller, go ahead and remember where we were in the index in the array, go ahead and set it, reload the data. Lots of different things, lots of mechanisms here to send our data back. So now let's look at how we would do this in Swift UI. So we're in our Swift UI project here, and the only thing that I've changed from the previous video is that we used to have this variable of favorite cities defined up here. And what I've done is I brought it down inside the struct for our content view, for our main view. And I've also put @state in front of it so that we can modify the values here. They're not going to be considered constants anymore, because that's the whole idea. We're going to dive down into a detailed view, change the population value, and when we come back, we want to be able to change things in here. So essentially, we've taken it out of the global data space, we put it here, which is better, and we have the @state variable so that we can make changes. Other than that, everything else here is the same. And then if we go to our city detail view, everything is the same there, except I've already added the button, the back button. So it's sitting here in our VStack after our two labels or text views, if you will. The other thing is I've started to fill in down here our preview where I've given it city data of some value, and that's what it's going to use when it calls this. So instead of initializing it to a value, I just wanted to show you can just declare it, leave it like this, because we're going to pass it when we call it. It'll get a value. So this is just like, you know, defining an argument for a function where you give it variable name and then the type. That's what we did here, except we put var in front of it because in a struct, it's a property. So essentially, we're just passing that with some initial value here. So what we want to do is we want to make some modifications here such that this data, this city data, can get modified and then sent back up to the caller. And the way we do that initially is right here, we're going to say @binding. So instead of @state, now @state, what @state does is if there's any changes in here to city data, you're going to see it here, but it's not going to be passed back up to a caller. So anybody invoking this, like through a navigation link or whatever, it's not going to get passed. It's only one-way street. But if we do a binding, if we say at binding, then it is a two-way street. So anything we change here, the caller is going to also see it automatically. Now, the only other thing down here is this preview, and I don't want to go into the details of why this is, other than the fact that you would, to just get this to work when it's a binding, you put .constant in front of it, and that will allow this to compile and give you the view that you need. Okay, so this does compile, although we have compiler errors, and that's because what some of the stuff that we're changing here, then how this is invoked here is going to be different. And that's why it's complaining. But that's fine. Let's just keep working here for now. So we have this button that is going to basically set some city data when it's tapped so that the data changes and then it's returned. And we have to add that text field in. So let's go ahead and add our text field. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is we'll just come up here and we'll say text field. And I'm going to drag this over, and I want it kind of right here. See how if I hold it a second, it kind of opens up, and it pops in a text field. There's some text placeholder here. I don't necessarily want that. I'll just take that out. And now the value is, this is going to be a variable, a new variable that we define here, and that variable is going to take on whatever value is entered in the text field. And it is text, it is a string. So this is going to be at state var, and let's call it population string, and it's going to be a string. So basically I've defined this property here, and I've given it an initial value of blank, so a string that just doesn't have any characters in it. And then down here, you would think, oh, I just want to put in population string, right? But here's the deal. Text field is just like, it's a view just like this city detail view is. And it turns out this value of this string that's getting passed in, it also is using at binding. And that means that population string is going to take on a value based on what this view does. So the way we do that is we put a $ in front of the population string variable name. What that tells the compiler is go ahead and send the data down. So whatever initial value you have for string, that should go there. And by the way, as they type, those new values are going to go into this variable. So this variable is going to continually get updated as we're typing. Then when we're done, we're going to hit that button. So here is our button action. And this is where we're going to take what's in the population string and update our city variable. So we can say city.population equals int, because we have to convert it to an integer, and then we can reference population string, and we'll just say that we're always going to enter a valid integer. So we'll put the exclamation point force expand at the end. And again, if it wasn't valid, this would come back nil. But city.population will get set. Now, the last thing we need to do is dismiss our view controller. So the way we do it in SwiftUI today for this video, I think this is going to change over time, is there's an environment variable that you are going to set or call to do the dismiss. So let me just copy and paste this. Once you do this once, you will do this probably in all of your structs, just to have it available to you if you want to dismiss things programmatically. You don't want it to just happen through the back button. So here, we're going to set an environment variable. I wouldn't worry about any of this syntax right now. Just accept the fact that that's the way it is. But what we're going to do here is then I'm going to say presentation mode dot wrapped value dot dismiss. And again, don't get too wrapped up in this whole thing, no pun intended, with the wrap value. You're just going to call this, and that's going to dismiss the view controller. So I believe at this point, let's just do a Command B again. We know that the other file is still failing, but here I don't see any red, so I think we're good. So again, the text field will be there. Let's just, well, we can't resume this yet until we get the other compiler file fixed. But this population string is what's going to get modified by the text field as we type. Then when we hit the button, we read what's in the population string, and we convert it to an integer, we set it on city, and then we dismiss. So now let's go back to content view. So in content view, we were doing a for loop, and we were looping over, although we changed it to list, but it's basically a for each, and we're taking favorite cities, and then city here is being supplied. Now city is essentially a constant. It's a let. It gets a value for every one of these as it iterates through it, but it is not modifiable. So we have to take a little bit different approach here. What we can do is say favorite cities dot indices, and that will then iterate over this and give us an index. So now, as we iterate over favorite cities, we're not getting each city, we are getting the index to it. So this would give us 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now here for city detail view, I'm not going to say city because I don't have it anymore. I'm going to say favorite cities indexed by index. And then the final thing is, remember, city detailed view, which is here, is an at binding. That this city variable is at binding, which means it's going to return a value as well as pass it in. So for us to read that properly, we have to put a $sign in front of it. So now notice no more errors here. And then this city, this right here, we can copy that. This has to be the favorite cities index, right? Because we don't have the city anymore, but we do have the array and the index. And we now have our array changed so that we're actually sending down the item in the array based on the index. And this also is modifiable based on the caller. So when those changes are made, this will be made here. So let's run this and see what happens. So if I command B, we are good to go. Let's do a resume. Okay, so we have our stuff here. I'm going to click on Boston, and I'm going to go, here's that text field, and I'm going to put in 888-888. And if I click a back here, notice I get 888-888. So that's it. So essentially, there was a few new concepts that you had to learn about. One was using the $sign on a variable when you call another struct or another view, and that means that it's passing data in both ways. So if it's modified there, you're going to see it as the caller. And over here, we did the at binding, right? So instead of at state is going to tell this what to do, or tell it to re-render whenever data is changed. So is at binding, by the way, but at binding is also saying we're sending data back. The other thing that's very cool about this is when this got changed, you'll notice there was no table view.reload. Anytime favorite cities is modified, this all gets re-rendered automagically. So you don't have to remember to refresh the table view each time. Everything in here will get refreshed automatically based on the changes that it is observing in all of these state variables that have at state in front of them.